panel, I will introduce myself. My name is Benjamin Jaffe. I am the host of the webinar series and the manager of digital training and development for BlueLedge. I was in the multimedia industry for over 15 years before I joined the legal industry, where I started as the legal technology manager for Orange Legal. I am a certified electronic reporter from AAERT. I am on their board of directors and the chair of the communications committee. So I'm busy, but so happy to be here joining you all today. So we are looking at our poll. All right, we got a lot of responses, so I'm going to end the poll and share the results. All right, so looks like most reporters here are from the deposition market. We do have a couple of official reporters, some independent transcribers, oh, and some students. I love to see students on these webinars. That is great because you guys are learning too. You want to know where you're moving forward. So that is great. Let's get into our panel. Today we are joined by Margaret Ann Morgan. She is an official court reporter for the state of Minnesota Judicial Branch out of Rochester, Minnesota. She is a certified electronic reporter and a certified electronic transcriber. She currently serves with me on the board of directors for AAERT and is part of the professional development committee. She helps to host all the great events they put on, like the annual conference and the executive forum. She also won Professional of the Year this year and was the Reporter of the Year back in 2009. And one of her proudest accomplishments is helping to petition the state court administration to make the salaries equal for all methodologies of court reporting in Minnesota, which I think is just. They are doing the same job, providing the same record, and I know you're going to jump into that further today because, Margaret, I know how passionate you are about that. Then we are followed by Casey Corbin. She has been a member of AAERT since 2009. She passed her CET in 2009 and her CER in 2012. She is the chair of the certification committee and completed studies in scoping in 2007 and owned her own scoping and transcribing business. She is now an official court reporter out of Indiana since 2012. Thank you so much for joining us, Casey.
Thank you.
And Jordan Kittrick, you have a bachelor's in clerical business administration and trained at BlueLedge. Now you have your CER from AAERT and are a digital court reporter primarily contracting with Veritext. You won the Veritext Star Digital Court Reporter Award, and you learned about this industry by your stenographic roommate. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, so we can all be friends here. That's great. So thank you guys so much for joining us. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so everybody can see you all. And let's just start. We heard a little bit, Jordan, with your introduction, but why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got into the industry and chose sort of the independent contractor side of court reporting?
Yeah, and thank you, by the way, for having me tonight. It's great to be here with so many experienced, just looking at the other two ladies' resumes, and very flattered to be asked to be part of the panel. But I'm very, very new in the digital court reporting industry. I actually got into it during the pandemic. To date, I have never physically stepped in the deposition room. However, I've done over 225 EBTs just on Zoom. So I kind of hit the ground running as a digital court reporter. And I was actually recommended to the industry by a stenographer. A close stenographer friend of mine said there's this new court reporting industry here in New York. There's a great need. She said, I have too much work as a steno. You should get into it. I think it'll be good for you. So I finished my BlueLedge course in September of 2020, and I've been working ever since.
Well, great. And it's nice to have such energetic young talent in our industry. And, you represent kind of this new wave in the, in the court reporting freelance market. So definitely it's been around for a while, but, different areas are growing. So we're happy to see it grow and have you be part of it. KC, why don't you talk a little bit about how you got into it and as an official court reporter?
Well, to be quite honest, I pretty much fell into it as you said in my introduction, I owned Casey's Scope and Scribe, and I went up to the Hamilton County Courthouse to talk to some reporters about getting some scoping business or transcribing business. And it was one of the court reporters that I talked to, and she kind of took me under her wing, and she said, "How would you like to fill in for me when I go on vacation?" And I thought, sure, why not? So I started filling in for her, and then other court reporters started asking me. Then I got hired in at the courthouse, and I've been doing this ever since.
Great. So you kind of just found your way. You were independent at one point, and then you sort of found your way into being an official court reporter.
Correct. Well, I wasn't an independent contractor as far as court reporting. I was a transcriber and scopist.
Great, but still providing a valuable service to the industry.
I certainly like to think so anyway.
And Margaret, what brought you into the industry? I know you had a background in more of working as a legal assistant and a paralegal. Is that correct?
Right. I've always worked at law firms. I think I started out as a receptionist and worked around the office with different attorneys and landed as the legal assistant for the senior partner in a civil litigation firm. So, and then did everything. So that was really good experience and foundation for the job. When I moved to Rochester, it's a smaller city and didn't have a lot of big law firms. So I took a job with court administration. And within like 18 months of my work at court administration, the position of electronic court reporter opened up. And so I applied for it and got it. And that was in like 1994.
Well, you've been doing this a little while. Well, speaking of that, we all have gotten into this industry a little bit differently, but we all, consider ourselves professionals and Margaret, back to you. How did you get trained? Sort of what prepared you to be a court reporter?
So working in law firms, I did, I was familiar with doing some, legal research and drafting orders and correspondence. I drafted jury instructions. Went to court with the attorneys during jury trials and managed exhibits and witnesses. So I had experience in the courtroom from the litigation side. And then with some time in court administration, you communicate with all the partners or justice partners. And then for training, I worked for a period of time with the outgoing electronic court reporter. So she taught me the record capture and taking annotations. But part of my responsibilities working for law firms was summarizing depositions. So preparing transcripts wasn't difficult for me to figure that out since I summarized them all the time. I read a lot of transcripts working for a litigation firm. So.
And at one point you looked at going into steno school, correct? But you couldn't really find one in your area?
Right. It was before online schools were so common, and the closest one was 90 miles away. So I looked at the academics, and I had some college already, and I looked at the academics offered in a steno program and just made sure that if I didn't have those already taken, then I took those at our local college and then just kept taking courses. So.
Great. Well, you definitely are well prepared, and I've seen your work and know how good you are at it. So clearly you had a great basis. Jordan, you went sort of in that online route through BlueLedge, as we mentioned earlier during your introduction. But maybe you can talk about some of the on-the-job training and some of the learning you did once you got working for an agency.
Yeah, so again, my introduction to court reporting all came through BlueLedge. I took the online course, studied, read, did as much as I could, and then the agency I ended up contracting with was Veritex here in New York City, and Veritex has an internal program, Top Class, which they offer to all their new digital court reporters. And then once I completed that, what was really nice is because we're working remotely over Zoom, they would allow all of their new digital court reporters to shadow. And that for me was some of the best experience. I was able to give about a month while waiting for my New York notary process. I had about a month of shadowing. And that to me, in addition to what I learned from BlueLedge, because reading about all the best practices in BlueLedge and learning was great, but when you actually get on a screen of Zoom in front of these attorneys, I feel like it just goes out the window. So when I actually started shadowing on Zoom different experienced digital court reporters here in New York, that was so helpful to me because I was observing different ways that they would handle the attorneys. Technical problems is a huge thing we experience in the virtual world. So that on the job shadowing experience is really what gave me the confidence, again, just to once I got my notary, just kind of just take off with my digital court reporting.
Great. And Casey, we talked earlier about you going to scoping school and trying to kind of get your clients through your transcription experience. But when you got to the courthouse and they started you filling in, did you shadow beforehand? How did you learn the process at your court in your area?
Yeah, I'm the same way. I shadowed the court reporter that I was filling in for. Um, every court, every judge has their own little quirks and different ways that they wanted to do things. So um, I started out actually in my home now, Superior Court 2. And then when I went to fill in on other uh, judges and courts, then I would spend a day or two with that court reporter to find out how they did. Some of the court reporters do orders, other courtrooms, the prosecutor does the orders, the judge does the orders. So it's a little bit across the board. So you just need to understand how each court functions. And
Well,
so
that's a great
that's,
segue to my next question is, so describe your day-to-day activities. What does a day look like in your shoes, as an official court reporter?
well, I started out in a different court than I am currently. In that position, I was responsible for doing orders at the end of a hearing, as well as taking log notes and making sure that the record is captured, et cetera, et cetera. Currently in Superior 2, I'm only occasionally responsible for the orders. Mostly the prosecutor does that. But my main focus always is you go in the morning, you test your equipment, make sure all your microphones are working, you just make sure you have all your supplies. I take log notes. I rein attorneys in when they start talking over each other, either by asking them to stop myself or giving judge a look that he knows what my look is when people are misbehaving and he takes care of it. Um, I take care of any transcripts that come through. I like to type my own as much as possible. Uh, mark exhibits, help keep judge focused on what he needs to as far as the calendar goes. If there's any changes to the calendar, there's a wide range of things that I'm responsible for because we do not have a clerk in our courtroom. It's me and it's judge, and occasionally we have a bailiff, depending on the case.
Well, and that's somewhat different than your day-to-day, Jordan, where you're not in a courtroom. You're connecting to different people all over the country, and your experience is remote. So maybe you can talk about your day-to-day activities.
Yeah, so currently, because I'm still working remotely, it's any of the Supreme Courts in New York. So it can be anywhere, from New York City to I've done cases in Niagara Falls area. So different from Casey, yeah, I'm just handling civil litigation. So just whatever that one assignment I have for the day, Lately, it's been 2 a day, which has been pretty busy. I'm just responsible, again, getting to each Zoom meeting early, making sure all of my equipment, I try to always test it the night before. Again, all of my equipment is working. My backup audio is working. I have batteries. Everything is plugged in. I just rewired my apartment, so I know I have a strong internet connection. So making sure first and foremost, all of my equipment is ready. I get my assignments from my contractor Veritex the night before. So just trying to briefly look over what attorneys I know will be coming, what information I have. I prepare my software again ahead of time. Morning of, I'm there at least 30 minutes early, get all of my stuff ready. As the attorneys come in, check their information, getting their firm, who they represent, any contacts I need. When the taking attorney shows up, any exhibits they'll need to be marked. I try to do it ahead of time. Unfortunately, sometimes people are late, so it doesn't always happen. And then from there, just making sure that the proceeding goes as smooth as possible over virtual. Again, as Casey mentioned, being aware of the crosstalk, because we know that on Zoom there's a delay. So that's a very common thing. This morning I worked with an interpreter. So of course there's another obstacle there when you're interpreting over a virtual system. And then again, once the proceeding is over, make sure I have everything I need from the attorneys, exhibits, any other documents. And then it's up to me to kind of do a brief cleanup of my notes. So I make sure that my transcriptionist will have something that's legible. All of my names, my addresses, my dates are correct. And at that point, I upload all of my backup and main audio so that my transcript can be made.
And Margaret, like Casey, you work in the court system and you have some more administrative functions besides the recording of the audio and the taking of the annotations and the, the high quality capturing of the record. You have some other administrative roles, correct? Or it's true administrative duties.
My primary responsibility is to capture the record and prepare transcripts. And then I work for a judge who, the way our chambers is set up is there's a judge, the court reporter, a law clerk, and a judicial clerk. So there's always a clerk in the courtroom. She manages, it used to be paper flow in and out, but all the case management responsibilities. My judge is a writer, so he likes to write a lot of his own memos. So he'll either dictate or write, and I'll, transcribe it for him. I do prepare orders from certain hearings. We're not doing as many as we used to because we've automated so much that it's made the orders a lot easier. But I prepare jury instructions, and sometimes I'll split the screen on the bench, and so my log notes I'll share my log notes with him during trials. Yeah, it's different every day. We handle all case types, so every day is mostly criminal, but we do everything.
And I think you said you transcribe. So how does that work? Are you transcribing as part of your primary responsibility, or is that something you have to do off the clock? I know it's different in every kind of geographic location, but how does it work in your system?
So I'm responsible to prepare my own transcripts, and we're paid separately, so they have to be done outside of regular work hours.
Okay.
So, and on our own equipment, we buy our own equipment and transcription software and, headsets, foot pedals, all of that. Our state is doing a pilot now on Informa Pauperis transcripts. They're going to try to get some of those done during the workday if that's possible. So that's just weeks old. We haven't really dived into that yet, but yeah, I prepare all my own transcripts. On occasion, I have had too many that I just couldn't keep up with. So I've had contracted with an AAERT certified transcription company and transcribers to help with that.
Great. And Jordan, you don't prepare your own transcript, correct?
I do not prepare my own transcript. No. So my job is to just be there live to capture the best audio possible. Again, AAERT standards for how I'm capturing both my primary and backup audios, taking very clear notes. I am fortunate. I do type quite fast. So I do type more than 80% of what's being said just as my own probably my own nervousness to make sure my playbacks are always 100%. So I'm typing again all of those important proper nouns that are needed. And once I finish, we go off the record, I take everything and I sent it to Veritex. Has an in-house team that they use to make all of our transcripts. So all of my audio files, as well as 3 sets of different notes I send off, that gets sent to a separate transcriptionist. And between the 2 of us, that record gets made.
And that's not to say that all independent, contractor or independent contractor court reporters or all court reporters in the deposition market don't transcribe. That's just your situation with your particular company. It really does depend on the company you're working for and their policies and procedures. So, but what you do is just the court reporting arm of the business.
Correct. And within the agency of Veritex, they actually do have transcriptionists. And again, a lot are AAERT, CERs, and CETs. But personally, the job that I applied for took, and that I enjoy, because, once it's over, that's it. I send off my little baby, all of my files, and then I wait for them to get made. So I enjoy it because it allows me to work more. Because as I mentioned, I'm doing 2, sometimes 3 EBTs a day. Whereas if I had to stop and transcribe, then I would be focusing on that. So it does allow me to work more day to day by having someone else make my transcripts.
And Casey, do you work similar to Margaret where you have to do it after hours, or is it part of you can do it in your course of your day?
I'm like Margaret, we're paid separately for doing that. So we have to, even if it's a county paid transcript, we have to do it on our own time and get paid that by the county. And obviously private pay, you can't work for the
Right.
county and work privately. They kind of frown on that for some reason.
I could see why. Well, back to you, Jordan. Maybe you can talk about the technology you're using. Obviously, you're in the Zoom realm, but talk about, what are you using to capture, your recordings? Are you using multi-channel? Do you have to maintain it yourself? So how does that work in your position?
Yep. So being that I'm contract with an agency, all the equipment is mine. The laptop, my microphones, my main. So, all right. So right now I currently have a remote setup and an in-person setup. So I'll talk about remote. So my remote setup, all the equipment, my laptop, my backup recorder, we do use Zoom technology. So I use an H1N, which is very, very dependable. Love this thing, works perfectly. Because I work for Veritex, they have an in-house software that I am able to use. I just pay a small fee for each job I do for using their software, their DRC, which captures. Currently, it's only capturing one source of audio because we are on Zoom. So everything's just coming through that. And then as a reporter, I'm wearing a microphone and it's Windows audio. For my in-person kit, which I do have, and as New York is lifting some of our COVID restrictions, I will begin working in person soon. I have a 4-track multi-recorder, an H6 by Zoom that I use, along with lavalier microphones, again, keeping with AAERT standards for my microphone equipment and capture equipment. But all of that equipment is that I purchased, I own, I maintain, I regularly test. The only thing that belongs to my company is the software that I use.
And you even pay for that as well?
Yeah, per job, there's a very nominal fee that we pay, yes.
Now that's different, Margaret, than you working in the court system. I assume they supply you with everything.
In the courtroom, yeah. Anything to prepare transcripts we purchase on our own, but in the courtroom, it's purchased and maintained by the judicial branch.
And what kind of system are you using? Is it multi-channel? Maybe you can describe sort of how the technology comes together for you.
So for in-person in the courtroom, we use FTR. We have an 8-channel system. So, and we tried to set up, the court reporters in our county got really involved with IT and setting up the courtroom. So microphone placement, we try not to put 2 microphones on a single channel. We were very proactive in getting our courtroom set up the way we do. So we record, it goes records on the hard drive on the computer in the courtroom, as well as on the server. And then at the end of the day, I make I make 2 backups on external hard drives just because I think I need to. And then overnight, there's the audio on the server gets backed up to like another state court administration, and then another one server in a secret location. We don't even know where it is. So that's got the audio preserved, and it's preserved on the 8 channels. So it's a really nice system. I can access it. But I can access, I think from my desk, I can access audio that I've recorded since like 2006.
Wow.
I need it. So, yeah.
And how about for remote setups?
So for remote setups, we still record on FTR. I record on FTR and we use Zoom. And so I'm recording on both platforms simultaneously. So, and it still saves onto we have a setup at home. So I use onto my laptop at home and on the server, the state server at the same simultaneously. We're connected by VPN. And I don't know, it works. We've learned a lot this last couple of years almost now.
Well,
So.
and you've done some great presentations through AAERT on the setup of that in your judiciary. So if anybody's really wanting an in-depth, they can go to AAERT's LMS, and I believe they have that for sale for anybody who wants to learn more about that. And Casey, is your setup similar to Margaret's, that you have multi-channel in your courtroom and they maintain it for you?
Right. We have the 8 track, that shows my age, 8 channel recording. We also use FTR. It's maintained by our IT department. And it's pretty much the same as what Margaret described. It initially records locally, but then it gets backed up to the network, and then by some magic it goes someplace else so that it's off-site, so that if anything happens to the building, then it's still secure.
And are you testing every morning, every day? How do you make sure that that installed software or hardware is doing its job?
Depending on what's going on in the courtroom, I don't necessarily test every day, but at least 3 times a week, go around to each of the microphones and do the scratch test to make sure that that microphone is actually recording on the channel that I think it is. And if I have any issues, then I've got IT on speed dial so that they can come up and help us out. I hate to have to delay a proceeding just because something's not working right.
Well, that's why testing and making sure it's right is key. You'd hate to get there and have to postpone something. There is one kind of key difference I think about, when you're a contractor, you get to choose your jobs, right? Jordan, is your schedule pretty flexible? You can say I want, I don't want, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that is one of the beauties of being a contractor. Sometimes again, I may get offered an EBT at 6 o'clock at night. Over Zoom, I did an EUO at 9 p.m. That is one wonderful thing I love. And about working from home, as early from 9 to 9 we can work. So there is a lot of flexibility there.
But if you need a day off or anything, it's very flexible. You pick up the jobs you want to pick up.
Yeah, that is one of the things. And again, the stenographer that recommended me to become a DR at Veritex, that was one of the things she mentioned, is that Veritex is extremely flexible. And I've been very appreciative that basically every Friday they set my schedule for the following week, which has been really nice. There was actually a question. Did you want me to answer it?
Oh, sure. Yeah, please.
It was directed to me, so I didn't know if
There you go, Jordan. Jump right
okay.
in.
Okay. So the question was the microphone that Jordan said she used what is the microphone that Jordan said she used in her remote setting? So for remote setting, I'm actually just using a headset, not the one I'm wearing today, but I'm using an over the ear. I actually got it on Amazon, really a big fan. It's a company called MPOW. What I like about it is the ear cuffs on it are really thick. So, living in a city, there's a lot of outside noise, but I rarely hear that with how thick these are. And because it's remote, the microphone is just through my Windows audio. For my in-person kit, I use lavalier microphones that I got from a company called Audio Technica. They're on Amazon.com. They were about $200 a microphone, but they are a very high quality. They're actually used by musicians to record, and they're just great lavaliers that you kind of just pin onto your shirt. So.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for answering that question.
Sure.
And so back to we were talking about schedules. Margaret, now you're an employee, right? So you have more employee benefits, employee schedules, that sort of thing.
Right. I schedule my life around our court calendar, basically, because
I see Casey
we're pretty
nodding and
busy.
agreeing.
Yeah. Yeah, and if I go on vacation or want a day off, we try to get another court reporter in our district to work. We're supposed to work for each other when we can before hiring a per diem to cover the calendar. And per diems, it's hard to find, and a lot don't like to work in court. So we really work for each other as much as we can, or reschedule the doctor appointment or whatever it is. And yeah.
So you have more of that 9 to 5 life, or 9 till court is over life, or probably not
Yeah,
even
I wish it
9,
was
probably.
9 to 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, not with my boss, but benefits are great. I am very grateful. Minnesota Judicial Branch employee. They've been great through the pandemic, and it's a good job. I really enjoy it.
Great. And I don't want to violate any antitrust laws, so we're not asking you what you make, just sort of how do you get paid? Are you paid on salary? Are you paid per job? Are you, Margaret, we talked when this first opened about being paid equal with stenographers. So I assume, well, I shouldn't assume, but are you on salary? Is that how it works?
Well, it depends. Yes, I'm on salary as long as I work your minimum 40 hours a week. If I work 45 hours a week, I'm on salary and I still get the same. If I work 40 hours, or if I work 35 hours a week, I get docked the hours. So, they want to know when we work. They want to know when we work less, but not when we work more. So that's.
And then you said that you get paid separately for your pages, your transcription. Is that by the page?
Right. Yeah, it's by the page. Yeah, and the several years ago, when I started, electronic reporters were paid about $10,000 a year less than stenographic reporters. And we got a group of electronic reporters together and wrote a petition. And our job descriptions were the same, and education-wise, there were electronic reporters that had more education. Some had the legal background, and we were all doing the same thing. And so we wrote it, sent it to, at that time, the governing body was the Conference of Chief Judges. Now it's a different judicial council is what it is. And simultaneously, the stenographic reporters were wanting to organize with a union. So they had two different things going at the same time. And the union said to the group is, you don't want another group of people that do the same job that you do for a lower salary, because then the administration is going to try to hire the other group at a lower salary. So kind of both things were going at the same time, and Teamsters, supported the same salary, as did the judicial branch. So it took a lot of work and a lot of meetings, and it didn't happen overnight, but was worth it.
Great. No, and now Jordan, you're paid differently than that, right? As a contractor, are you paid per hour, per proceeding? How do you kind of get your money?
I am a little jealous hearing about all those wonderful benefits, Margaret. That sounds amazing. So that, of course, as we know, when you are a contractor, there are benefits and there are, things you have to figure out on your own. So I'm not salary. I have a minimum. So again, there are different tiers with digital court reporters within our agency, but basically I show up and I get a 3-hour minimum, and then I'm able to bill for each additional hour that I work. So again, it's when I'm working that I'm paid. If I take a day off, if I'm sick, I don't make any money, especially too, because I'm not making the transcript. So again, it's when I'm on the record from when I'm off the record is to when I'm able to bill. I invoice Veritex at the end of each day when I submit, again, all of my files, all of my exhibits, all of my notes. I'm able to invoice them. And then of course, any additional transcript. So when we have multiple, I might have 9 attorneys on, multiple defendants, each additional attorney who wants a certified copy, I'm also able to bill for that. So yeah.
Great. Well, that's great. And Casey, are you like Margaret, your salary with benefits and pages for your transcript?
Correct. Our standard work week is 37 and a half hours. Anything over that, we start to get comp time to be taken whenever we can. Anything over 20 hours of comp time, we actually get paid for it.
Well,
Plus
that's
we
nice.
have vacation time, sick time, and good health benefits. But yes, as far as the transcripts go, if it's a public defender or the state that requests a transcript, then those are paid by the county and go on our paychecks. And then civil litigation or private attorneys, then that is billed directly between uh, the attorneys and myself. The court has nothing to do with that part.
Well, great. And I do see a couple more questions, but I'm going to hold those to the end so we can get some of the pre-planned discussion going. But and I do want to say that, just because you work in the deposition market doesn't always mean you're an independent contractor, as we mentioned earlier. There are ones that are on salary. There are ones that get paid for pages. It is different, but this is the experience of our panelists today, and so this is just showing some of the contrast that could be contrast between the different roles. So, with that being said, Jordan, I know you are certified. Is that something that was preferred? Did that get you something extra at your job, or is that something that was required?
Okay, yeah. So again, and I'm only speaking from the agency of Veritex because that was initially how I got into digital court reporting. It was mandatory you completed BlueLedge. They said we have a partnership with BlueLedge. They recommended it. I purchased the BlueLedge course and I took that. Once I passed it, I then got into their course. I was referred to, however, by Veritex to join the AAERT agency. Again, I am so new to this industry. I had never heard of AAERT. As soon as the day I heard about it, I immediately logged onto the website, read everything I could, and found out about becoming a member. And at that point, I became a member and then purchased the AAERT best practices guide. But no, it was not required by my employer. There are some digital court reporters that work for our agency that are not AERT, and they don't have to be. However, the incentive for me was if you do become an AERT CER and you pass the exam, there was an increase in my pay. So it was a very good incentive for me to do it. And I'll be honest, since I've passed it, I've now mentored, I believe, two other DRs here in the New York, New Jersey area that are now also AERT members, because I told them, I obviously loved the increase in my pay, but the knowledge I gained from taking the AERT course has been invaluable. I learned so many things from studying that book and studying for the exam that I use every single day on this job. And I'm very appreciative I took the course because it really it gave me a lot more confidence. Because again, these two women here have such, decades of legal background. I don't have that. So by taking the AERT course, I just learned so much about the legal industry and then what is possibly ahead for me in the future as I continue in the career path. So since becoming a CER, it really has helped boost my confidence and my skills, but it was something not required, but recommended by my employer.
And Margaret, you have state certification in your state, correct?
Right. Through the state court administration, there's an electronic court reporter certification that you have to pass to be able to work for the judicial branch. Some jobs descriptions now are going out and recognizing the AAERT certification in lieu of the state certification. So if you're AAERT certified, you don't have to take the state court administration certification. There's no incentive to do it. I always encourage people to do it. I think I'm a better reporter with the AAERT certification than going to the conferences and continuing education. So yeah,
And
we have
that
to have
really,
15 hours. Go ahead.
oh no, please continue.
All state judicial branch employees have to have 15 hours continuing education every year, some of which is provided, most is provided by state court administration, but I can overlap AAERT and administration.
And like with everything we've talked about today, some agencies require you to be certified, some courts require you to be certified, others do not. I know some states like Georgia, it's in their in their laws that you have to be certified to work in the court system. In other states it's not, so it really does depend. We all come from different areas. Okay, Casey, the last question I have for today, but I'm going to start it with you. What would you recommend for somebody coming into your role new?
Probably the best thing that I could suggest is, if you don't, well, I would suggest that you attend a school if at all possible. Secondly, I would say to join AAERT and get involved in it with the networking and the mentoring that you can find from especially going to conferences and interacting with people in the business, making those types of contacts. Educate yourself, take classes on, if you're not as a whole course, at least take some classes, know your punctuation, do things on your own time that are benefit to you and that are going to make you a better reporter, transcriber. um, just educate yourself is the best thing I can say.
And Jordan, same question to you. I know you said you've mentored some new people coming in, and you're somewhat new yourself, but clearly you know the process of getting in, and maybe you can help people steer new people to the industry through your eyes.
Yeah, so much of what Casey said was just great. If you can join the AERT website, just start reading, following, learn about the industry. I'll also say too, don't believe all the myths. A lot of people, when I explain to them what I do, well, you're not a stenographer, so what do you just record audio? I don't understand. What do you do? Don't believe, unfortunately, there is somewhat of a negative connotation to what we do. And that's a shame because, again, a stenographer got me into this industry. So if you can find a person that's willing to mentor you, I would say go for it. Again, I had two great gentlemen who have been DRs for about one 5 years, one 10 years here in New York, who gave me fantastic advice, everything about what kind of microphone, what kind of XLR, to when to reset, your DRC, just a lot of really great tips that helped me. And again, when you get there and you're on your first job, don't be intimidated. That was one piece of good advice I got. It can be, again, very nerve-wracking to go from just taking a course online to being in front of attorneys. But just remember, at the end of the day, they will say it in every one of their depositions, the most important person here is the court reporter, and attorneys will recognize that. So use that confidence to your benefit, because without us, these proceedings can't happen.
And Margaret, I'm going to give you the final word for maybe a final 1 to 2 minutes, and then we'll go to the questions.
Well, there's not much to add because I agree with everything Casey and Jordan said. And, be patient with yourself. You're not going to learn this job overnight. There's a lot to it. Pay attention, go sit in a courtroom, go, shadow someone, we need more people in this industry. And I'm sure if you call the courthouse and tell somebody you're interested in becoming a court reporter, ask questions, and I'm sure that you'll get some help. Also, there's so many Facebook groups out there that are about transcription or just different situations, and you can just learn so much just by reading some of the posts and how to put place a comma in a transcript or use a semicolon instead of a comma. And it's just, I don't think I can add anything more. Just be patient.
And that is great advice. Be patient and be part of it. So I appreciate that. I'm just going to share my screen real quick. And thank you guys so much for being here. I am surrounded by such knowledgeable and lovely ladies. So I am a very lucky gentleman today. So thank you for being a panelist. Thank you for contributing your time to the industry. We develop these webinars for free for the industry to help provide knowledge and get it out there. And I'm just so glad to know so many people and have made so many contacts that can share this. So I do appreciate your time, Margaret, Jordan, and Casey. You guys have been wonderful. Just a reminder, we have a future webinar, Mixing Remote and In-Person, Best Practices for Hybrid Legal Proceedings. This is Wednesday, December 8th at noon Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific Time. This will be our last webinar of the year. I can't believe we've made it a whole year through our webinar series, but I am so excited about that. So yeah, please join us and register for that. And now is a great time for questions, and we have a bunch of them. So I will jump in here and ask them. Looking around. First, how do you join a conference? I'll take this one. AAERT has 2 conferences every year. Their annual conference usually happening in June, and the executive forum happening in March. The executive forum this upcoming year will be virtual, so you all can look at the website and do that. Take a look and see. It's usually about the middle of the month, and in the conference in June, the annual conference, which anybody can join. You don't have to be a member, but we do encourage members to go and to become a member, will be happening in Milwaukee. And we're very excited for that. Wisconsin has recently adopted digital court reporting to the state. So I think that would be great. Now, Margaret, they were asking, what was the webinar you did where you talked about the technology in the courtroom? That was at the annual conference, correct?
Most recently, I did one about the jury trial pilot. And then
Right.
I did, yeah, and that was that courtroom that is really complex and designed to for jury trials during the pandemic. And then I did a recent one too. And oh yeah, that was just the recent one on with the technology AVI. I don't remember the title of it though, but it was recent.
Yeah, if anybody needs to get a hold of that, email AAERT at aaert.org and ask for Margaret's most recent webinars, and they will direct you in the right location. They're great, the administration there. So Jordan, somebody is asking about how do you take 2 to 3 jobs a day if you don't know the end time of the first job?
Yeah, good question. Again, I'm going to speak for the state of New York where I work. Most depositions here take place mornings are either at 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. Afternoon deposition or EBTs will begin from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. You are correct. There is no way really to know how long a job will go. Often though, when you look at the caption, for example, if I'm doing maybe a defendant or a third party, it tends to go quick. So my calendar scheduler will set me up for a 10 o'clock. If we, again, know it's probably going to be a defendant, a third party, someone who's quick, they will also add me on for a 2 p.m. If I'm usually not done with my morning deposition by about 1 p.m., if I'm still working, I just send a quick text message to my calendar clerk and I say, unfortunately, still working, can't do the afternoon job. They take it off my calendar and give it to someone else. But that has been one of the beauties about working over Zoom. Because I'm home, because my equipment is still live, it's very easy for me to just set up my recording to begin another deposition. So it's very easy for me to take 2 EBTs in one day, working from home.
Well, and I'll say I did legal videography and digital court reporting before the pandemic. And even then, you really get to learning what is the appropriate time length. You learn that a doctor depot in, a case versus a car, in a case versus a car insurance company is probably only going to be scheduled for 1 to 2 hours. And it's going to be very tight because they're paying them a ton of money for that testimony, and they're not going to want to pay that money for an additional hour, or an EUO is always going to be quick, but other things, are going to be long. If you're part of something that's one company suing another company, and, the notice or the exhibits come in early and you can start seeing what it's about, you start to learn those things over time. And I'm sure there's a similar thing in the courtroom. I'm sure Margaret and Casey can look at their docket and know this is for 5 minutes and this is for 3 hours, and so Casey's nodding her head, so I'm going to take that as a yes.
Yeah, usually you plan your lunches accordingly as well, your lunches and your coffee breaks.
I call it the Superior Court 2 diet plan when you work through lunch.
There you go. Margaret, there's a question here for you. What were you saying about getting so automated? I don't really know what that was referring to, but somebody was asking, you were talking about automated things.
So we don't prepare orders. We have a clerk in the courtroom who's doing entering into the system the judge's order right away, and then it's all electronic. I probably didn't say, I should have said electronic. Now, instead of taking the file back to my desk and then preparing the order for the judge to sign, the clerk is in the courtroom entering fields, checking fields, and then the order is, it's actually their court minutes is what we're using for orders now too. So they update the case management system real time in the courtroom, so there's no delay. And then that's eliminated a lot of paperwork that I ended up doing. So that's what I meant like that. And I just looked up the course title, but I don't see it on the website. So it may not have been 90 days yet for it to be posted, but it was, yeah. Well, I had it up. Here it is. Pandemic Courtroom and Beyond for
There you go.
COVID-19 and criminal jury trials. There you go.
For those who are looking, and if you want to request it, I think you can request from AART to add it, even if it's before the 90 days. So just email them and request it. Casey, we had a question about remote jobs. Are you doing remote, or are you all back in person at this point?
We're doing a hybrid right now. Attorneys have found for something like a quick 5-minute pretrial, or things that there's not argument and a lot of exhibits going back and forth, but that they can save their client a lot of money by not having to drive from downtown Indianapolis up to Hamilton County, which is about a 45-minute drive. So we are doing a hybrid of in-person, and we use Zoom as well.
And what equipment are you using? Is it what you had already established in your courtroom?
For the most part, except for they bought us this huge, huge television screen that can see from the far side of the courtroom. But other than that, we're using the same equipment.
Great. And Jordan, you spoke about your equipment a little bit already, so I'm going to call that answered. So great. Let's see. Another question. This was aimed at you, Jordan. Is it feasible to do independent court reporting as a side gig, or is this something you feel like you have to do as your primary job?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ariana. So the answer is both. I get asked by a lot of new DRs here in New York, is this your only income? Is this a side job? For me personally, it is my only income. When we're not in pandemic times, I volunteer a lot with my church, usually twice a week. So I've only been working about 18 to 24 hours a week, and I'm able to afford living in New York City. I don't know. I can't say exactly what that amount is, but if that helps you. However, I do know that there are a lot of people who work for this company and then, they do social media work. They might be musicians. They have other side hustles, as we call it. And working as a contracted digital court reporter supports them with that other passion they have. But again, you could do this full time, 5 days a week, and it's lucrative. It is a very lucrative industry to be in.
And I'll say I've worked with military spouses that move or that, can only do it certain days of the week. I've worked with, people who, have to take off for certain religious holidays or, are a particular faith that doesn't want, that are unable to work, on Fridays or things like that. So it definitely is a job that is flexible if you're in that, gig economy contract side of it. But also, KC, you got into this as a transcriber, and that's a lot of people do that as a side hustle. And you, I assume you can take on extra work if that's something you desire, although you sound very busy.
Uh, yeah, if I wanted to, I could. That's what I was going to suggest. If they wanted to have a side job, probably transcribing might be a little bit easier than being a independent court reporter. You can work on more on your terms than when the calendar says you have to work.
Well, definitely, definitely. Margaret, I know you speak of mentorship, so this sounds like a great question for you. What type of mentorship do you recommend as part of AAERT or when you're becoming a digital court reporter? How do you find your mentor, that sort of thing?
Well, I'd probably start out in the area that you live, find out if there are electronic court reporters being used in your court. If you're in an area that doesn't use electronic reporters, it might be a little more difficult. Go on the AAERT Facebook group and just ask, does anyone want to mentor me? Yeah, it's probably that. Those are my two biggest suggestions, is maybe through
Well,
AAERT or.
and you can join AAERT as a learning member or as an associate member. So you can get a lot of those benefits when you're still learning to get into the industry. And so, that gives you the member book and you can start joining, events and webinars and finding people in your area. So definitely a way to find mentorship. And also, look around the companies in your area. A lot are hiring right now. So it's definitely something that you're hiring. The requirements for hiring, we're not going to get into that today, but certainly if you seek out the company or you want to seek out Jordan, she can probably tell you about the requirements that happen for her hiring. Margaret as well. I know you post jobs for Minnesota, so feel free to reach out to the panelists. If you all want, you put your email addresses in the chat window so everybody can have access to that. There was one question
Can
about,
I can I just
yeah,
add one thing to that too, real quick?
sure.
Is that, in regards to independent court reporting contractors right now, we have been so busy here in New York City with Veritex, they've had to close their calendar. So to show you the demand, and they have stenographers and DRs working, but as the court systems are opening up, we're that busy that they'll actually say we can't take any more jobs. So if you're looking to get into it as an independent, there's a lot of work right now. Sorry. Go ahead.
And we're a couple minutes over, so I'm gonna kind of rapid answer a few of these. There are definitely Facebook groups dedicated to digital court reporting. Seek them out if you're interested to see the day in the life of. Also contact Jordan and Margaret, and contact these companies that are hiring. BlueLedge has an entire job board, blueledge.com/jobs, and there are, I think, 40 companies there hiring all over the country for all different types of positions: official court reporters, freelance court reporters, uh, full-time court reporters for deposition firms. So please take a look. The email addresses are there. So great. And then the last question I see is somebody asked about buying a stenographic machine. Um, that's sort of up to you. That's a different methodology than digital court reporting. Stenographers have very impressive skills of how fast they can type, but it does take a very long time to learn it, anywhere from, at the extreme quickness of 18 months to the extreme length of, 5 to 7 years for some people. It really can take a long time. It's a large investment, and a lot of digital reporters, a lot of people get into digital reporting maybe while they're in stenography school, so that they can have an income, they can have that kind of moment, like Jordan said, of getting used to being in the courtroom and or in the deposition room, and then they take that skill on. As they're learning, as they're progressing through speed, because stenography very much focuses on speed, but very impressive when they can type as fast as they can type. I can barely type 50 words a minute, and they're like 4 or 5 times that. So very impressive. But this is going to conclude our webinar. Thank you again to Margaret Morgan, Jordan Kittrick, and Casey Corbin for joining us today. And you guys have been wonderful to our audience, and wonderful to be here today. So thank you so much.